Hello there, it's glad to have you once again joining us on the program. I'm Victor Matthias. It's almost 5 months after he first proposed it. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has signed the country's 6.07 trillion naira, that's about $30.6 billion budget for 2016, into law. The president said that Nigeria was facing, quote, probably the toughest economic times in the history of the nation, end of quote, but that his government was working day and night to diversify the economy. Today on the program, we'll be getting the views of Nigerians on this document. But let's first take a look at trending topics in the past week. A Nigerian teenager kidnapped by Boko Haram more than 2 years ago was rescued, the first of more than 200 girls abducted in a raid on their school in Chibok town. She sadly revealed, however, to her rescuers that 6 of those girls have lost their lives. The division in the Nigerian Labour Congress came to the fore as both factions took separate decisions as regards the regulation of the downstream petroleum sector, which resulted in the hike in fuel price. Well, there you go, the trends in the past week, but back to the discussion and focus of the day. We have Olumuyiwa Matuluko. He is the editor of Pt.1. Lloyd Atiku, the research lead of Budget, and Oludotun Babayemi, the co-creator of Follow the Money. Well, thanks to all of you, and thanks once again for coming on the program. Oludotun, let me just come back to you. What exactly are your thoughts about the budget?
If we look at it, having 6.07 trillion for about 170 million people is quite displeasing and not really something to smile about. So what does 6.07 trillion means for Nigerians? So if you divide that by 170 million people, it means the Nigerian government this year alone will be giving us each person in the country 35,000 naira into our pockets. That is just to look at how it feels like. I mean, the 6.07 trillion, very, very small. When you compare this to populations that are almost the same as we are, so you look at Mexico. Mexico is doing around 300 billion US dollars, and Nigeria is doing so this year with 6.0 trillion. That's about 30 billion US dollars. That the difference is so wide, and this shows that we will still be struggling with being a country in a developing society. And but having said that, looking back 4 years ago, our budgets used to revolve around 4 trillion. And this year alone, the president that we have now has done far much better to increase it to 6.07 trillion.
The budget itself, 6 trillion. How much is actually under the direct control of the minister is barely about half of it, about 3 trillion. The budget is segmented, the expenditure is segmented into 5 different categories. You have what they give to the ministry, department, and agency is about 3 trillion. It's not different from what we had last year. The next block is what you call the service-wide vote, presidential discretion, which leaves a lot of room for manipulation and a lot of fraud. And we know about it, the Dasuki saga, that space is still open for a lot of manipulation. You look at capital supplementation, where you see constituency projects, issues around that space itself, no participatory initiative within that space also. How many communities actually tender up, oh, this is what we want in the community, this is what we are getting. And we know how these things are manipulated. Then we go a little bit upward and look at statutory allocation. Absolutely nothing to write home about. Of course, the National Assembly is getting 115 billion without breakdown. Nigerian Judicial Council is getting about 7-something billion without breakdown. We have the UBE, they're hanging without breakdown. So a lot of rooms for manipulation. Then one step forward again, the final bracket, which we call, um, which we now call, well, don't let me even jump into that now. So if you look at the structure of the budget, as it were, it does not give room for any, beyond even the spending culture. It's when you spend, if you spend 1 naira and you get 1 naira in terms of value, that's where we should be happy. Unfortunately, we are not getting that.
Well, not so good a picture has been painted already so far, Muiwa. I hope you are carrying a different brush. Now talking about the tech space, it has been identified as a key factor that will drive Nigeria's economy to a higher level. How represented will you say that sector is in this budget?
So in my opinion, the ICT sector is poorly represented in National Budget 2016. Uh, a total amount of 15 billion naira, 15.9 billion naira has been earmarked for the sector. Out of that, 9.9 billion is for recurrent expenses, recurrent expenditure, and 6 billion of that is for capital expenditure. I think that's very poor because capital expenditure is where if you want to point out to how much potential growth there is in a sector, that's where you look at capital expenditure. So I think it's very poor, but at the same time, I also feel like it's a very, on the whole, the budget I feel like is a very realistic projection. Let's not forget that this is a projection, very realistic, because at this point, the country is quite broke. So if we're expecting the government to promise more than they can deliver, that will be quite an unfair expectation. So I think the way forward now is for the communications minister to see the best use he can put this amount that has been allocated for the sector, and then we see how we can find other creative ways to do what should be done to move the sector.
Well, now you mentioned ideas. What are those ideas you're talking about?
One way I feel that's very crucial is to invest in the knowledge base. Like if Nigeria is going to be one of the, I believe it's top 50 or is it top 30 economies by 2050, that's the target. Then we have to invest we have to make Nigeria a knowledge-based economy. So we have to invest in the brains of the people, especially the young ones. So if I would suggest that the minister push for inclusion of ICT in the education curriculum, a way of improving awareness of ICT among students, because I know that, for example, I myself, while I got, will I say, initiated into ICT quite late in my life, yeah, I know that if I had the opportunity quite earlier, things would have moved differently than the way they are now. But I'm still thankful for where I am. But I believe the younger ones now need to see the opportunities that everybody should stop thinking along the line of the oil and gas sector, or I have to get this white collar job somewhere. People are creating something from nothing based on just information and communications technology. So the younger minds should start to see these opportunities at a younger age, so that they can have, by the time they are old enough to play a key role in this economy, they would have been well prepared.
All right, guys, just hold it for a second. We'll take a quick break and we'll be back shortly. Join us again.